What's up guys, Agent here again with another Wolfhunter theory crafting video. Today we're going to be discussing front bar weapon traits for Magicka DPS. So again, for those of you guys who are wondering why this particular video is a little bit janky, why I don't have an intro video, it's because I am in Denmark, so I am working off my laptop, so the audio might not be as good, the video quality might not be as good as a result. But enough about that, let's go on and talk about what we have in front of us today. So right now, right in front of us, we have basically 4 different quadrants. So basically, front bar traits was kind of a question that was raised up for Magicka DPS, whether or not it would change from the typical Infused that we currently have right now in the meta. And the reason why this was brought up was because of the way backbar enchants are working now. So right now, on live, if you use a weapon ability, so in this case block 8 is a Magicka DPS, and you swap to your front bar, block 8 would proc your front bar enchant. However, in Wolfhunter, it is now changing so that your back bar block 8 will now proc your back bar enchant. And if it's infused, it'll proc on the infused cooldown with the infused kind of level. So let's say you have an infused flame damage enchant, it would do damage equal to an infused flame damage enchant and do it every 2 seconds. But if you have like a Nirnhoned, then it will have the base flame and then every 4 seconds. So that kind of changes the game a little bit for Magicka and Stamina DPS now. So particularly the enchants that we're going to be using while we're on our front bar here. So what I have here are basically 2 different combinations of enchants that we might end up seeing being used most often in Wolfhunter, as well as 2 different classes. So for each class, there are classes with an additional crit damage modifier and those without. So the top half here is all Magicka Warden. So this will represent non-crit damage classes. So that's Wardens, Sorcerers, and Dragon Knights. And on the bottom here, we have Nightblades, and this represents the 2 classes that have additional crit damage modifiers. That would be Nightblades and Templars. And then on the left side, we have Flame on the front bar, Shock on the back bar. This particular enchant kind of combination will help basically take IA off of healers, so your healers can wear something else instead of IA, because that shock damage enchant on the back bar will continue to proc Concussed, which also applies Magna Vulnerability, so you're able to basically maintain this with 2, maybe 3 Magicka DPS running shock enchants. So that's this left side of the spreadsheet. This right side of the spreadsheet is Berserker / weapon damage on the front bar and flame on the back bar. And I did correct for Magna Vulnerability, so there's a little bit, so that way we can compare the DPS between not just the 3 different traits, but also between the 2 different enchants, because I did want to explore that a little bit more. Now, weapon damage on the front bar, flame damage on the back bar is probably what's going to be the best for most scenarios, for most Magicka DPS, just because having that weapon damage on your front bar basically improves your spell damage, which helps not just your single target DPS, but also your multi-target DPS as well. And then the flame on the back bar, obviously, will just keep on proccing on cooldown as long as you keep block 8 up. So that's pretty much, you just basically move your damage enchant to your back bar, because Berserker will not proc off of block 8, and the tail Berserker will only proc off of light attacks and heavy attacks. So if you're going to be using it, you want it on your front bar now instead of your back bar. So we did look at 3 different traits. So the first trait we looked at was Infused, the meta right now in Somerset. And then we took a look at 2 other traits. So we took a look at Nirnhoned, and we took a look at Precise. And this is why I decided to look at both Nightblades and Wardens, because Nightblades have that 10% additional crit damage, which might make Precise scale a little bit differently because of the additional crit chance playing with the crit damage modifier and resulting in a higher overall crit modifier compared to a Warden or a Dragon Knight or a Sorcerer. So what I did was I did basically 5 parses for each of the different combinations here, and then we averaged them all together. So you can see here for the Flame Shock on the Magicka Warden, they're all pretty much within 100 DPS of each other. So it doesn't seem to matter all too much if you're going Flame Shock on a non-crit damage modifying class, which trait you're going to end up choosing. So you can go with Infused, or you can go with Nirn, or you can go with Precise. The highest parse did come from Precise at 54008. So that's something you want to keep in mind there, but that's just 1 parse. Infused did pretty well. 2 of our parses was 44.8k, and Nirn did pretty good overall. Had the lowest amount of kind of spread So that's something you just want to take into consideration when you choose them. So you can still go with Infused if you're going Flame Shock. It doesn't seem to, the DPS difference here is so small that you can pretty much chalk it up to, you know, RNG with crits. Now with Flame Shock with Magicka Nightblades here, we see a little bit of a different story. So Infused ends up pulling out ahead by a noticeable margin. So the biggest difference here is about 1600 DPS, which is definitely more than your standard deviation. Standard deviation here was 500, so that's about 3 or so. So that's actually a pretty wide margin if you think about it. So Infused does seem to win out ahead, and in terms of just looking at the raw numbers, the highest parts did go to the Infused with 41.5k. So if you're going Flame Shock, it does seem like Infused is the way to go, regardless of whatever class you happen to be. Now for Berserker Flame, there's a little bit of a different story, though not that much of a different story. So Infused here pulls a little bit higher than our lowest parts here, so it pulled about 600 DPS, 500 DPS higher, so that is just barely outside of the standard deviation range. I would not necessarily chalk this up to random chance, but it is still kind of close enough together that I would say it doesn't really matter ultimately all too much. But the highest parts does go to Infused again with 46.1k, so that's something you want to take into consideration when you're deciding to do this. This is for the Magicka Warden. Now for Magicka Nightblades here, it's going to be a little bit closer, so Infused doesn't actually end up winning. However, it did have the highest parts with 51.7k. Nirn actually ended up winning, if you're just looking at the averages, at 50.1k DPS. Now, this is about 400 DPS higher than the lowest one, so precise, and only about 200 higher than Infused. So that's still pretty close. It's not greater than 1 standard deviation, so I would potentially chalk this up to RNG. It's not necessarily, it's still a noticeable difference, but it doesn't seem to be all that big of a difference, particularly when taking into consideration that the highest numbers did go to Infused. Nirn did have a very nice final 5th parts there at 51.6k, but the highest part still went to Infused. So it does seem like Infused is going to end up being a little bit, pretty much going to remain the best front bar trait that you're going to want on your weapon, regardless if you're going to be using the weapon damage enchant or you're going to be using the flame enchant. So it doesn't seem to really matter what class you are, whether you're one with additional 10% additional crit damage or not. So for Magicka DPS, it doesn't seem like you need to necessarily transmute any of your weapons. Now, if we take a look at the differences in DPS, however, we do notice that Berserker Flame, at least on a Magicka Nightblade, does seem to be pulling pretty much toe-to-toe with Flame Shock when you take into consideration minor vulnerability, because with Berserker Flame, obviously you don't get any minor vulnerability uptime or anything noticeable, so we did have to correct for that here. And in the Magicka Warden, all of our parses with Berserker Flame ended up beating out our Flame Shock parses when we controlled minor vulnerability. So that basically tells me that Berserker Flame is going to be the best combination of enchant traits. Not just for single target, but also for AoEs as well, because that boost spell damage from Berserker does affect all your abilities, basically. So this does help boost your AoE damage as well as your single target damage. Now, there is a case for using Flame Shock, and that's if you want your healers to basically not wear IA. With 2 Magicka DPS running Shock on the back bar with these new changes, be able to maintain pretty close, if not at 100% concussed uptime / minor vulnerability uptime. So that's really, really nice to have as an option there. So you might want to, for example, have a Sork running Shock on the back bar. By average, minor vulnerability uptime with a Shock on the back bar was around 66%. So you would need another DPS or healer running Shock enchants in order to maintain, completely get rid of IA. But it is an option out there for certain guilds if you do want to remove IA from the healer, maybe have them wear a different set. There's not many instances where you would necessarily want that to happen, but I do recognize that it is a potential option. It might be easier just to have 2 Magicka DPS run Flame Shock and have your healers run some other set to kind of help out the group, something like Mending or Worm potentially. So that's kind of where it looks like for Magicka DPS. It does look like Infused will still be the strongest trait, and it's just going to be a switching of where your enchants are. So instead of weapon damage back, flame front, you just put flame back, weapon damage front. But there is an argument for having flame front, shock back in certain scenarios. So that's basically where Magicka DPS stand, assuming nothing changes between now and when Wolfhunter hits live. So that is it for this video. Hope you guys found this informative. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to them as soon as I possibly can. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Apologies again for the quality. Again, I am recording this from my laptop rather than my desktop, so the next few videos will be around this quality. So apologies, but hopefully I'm still able to get that information across to you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.